In the heart of Ogundele village, life for Adanna was a daily battle against scorn and invisibility. Born with features deemed undesirable by the villagers and burdened by poverty, she lived on the fringes of society. Adanna's days were marked by backbreaking labor and the sharp sting of ridicule from those around her. Children laughed at her, adults dismissed her as a cursed presence, someone unworthy of companionship or respect. Each night, as she returned to her crumbling hut, she cried herself to sleep, haunted by dreams of acceptance and love. The villagers, steeped in their traditional ideals of beauty and status, offered no solace. Even those who were kind avoided her, fearful of aligning themselves with someone so widely ostracized. Despite her suffering, Adanna harbored a deep yearning for change, a hope that someday, somehow, she might find a way to escape her torment. One fateful evening, after another day of ridicule and rejection, Adanna wandered into the forest seeking solace. The trees loomed tall and dark, their whispers carried by the wind. There, in a small clearing bathed in eerie moonlight, she encountered an old woman with a weathered face and eyes that gleamed with unsettling wisdom. The woman introduced herself as Ekwutosi, a witch with powers beyond mortal comprehension. She seemed to see straight into Adanna's heart, recognizing her pain, desperation, and deepest desires. "You wish for beauty, wealth, and the love of your people," Ekwutosi said, her voice a mix of warmth and menace. Intrigued but wary, Adanna listened as the witch described a deal. Ekwutosi would transform Adanna into the most beautiful and wealthy woman in the village, adored and envied by all. But the price was steep. Adanna had to perform 7 sins, acts that would test her morality and soul. Tempted by the promise of a life free from suffering, Adanna hesitated only briefly before accepting. The witch's gnarled fingers traced a symbol in the air, and in an instant, Adanna's life changed forever. She emerged from the forest radiant, draped in riches, and ready to claim her place among those who once scorned her. The transformation was miraculous. Adanna returned to the village no longer the poor, unattractive woman everyone mocked, but a vision of beauty and opulence. Her skin glowed, her features were flawless, and her once tattered clothes were replaced by luxurious garments adorned with gold. Villagers stopped in their tracks to admire her, their gazes filled with awe and envy. Men who had previously ignored her now competed for her attention, while women whispered behind her back, desperate to uncover her secret. Adanna basked in the newfound respect and admiration, reveling in the power her beauty and wealth brought her. She quickly ascended to a position of influence, attending celebrations as an honored guest and commanding attention wherever she went. Yet, beneath the surface of her glamorous new life, the weight of the witch's deal loomed heavy. The witch's words echoed in her mind. She could keep this life only if she completed the 7 sins. At first, Adanna justified her actions. Was it not fair for her to finally enjoy what others had taken for granted? But with each sin she committed, the beauty that radiated on the outside began to contrast starkly with the guilt and darkness festering in her heart. Adanna's journey into darkness began with an act that seemed harmless at first, but each subsequent sin dragged her deeper into a moral abyss, staining her soul in ways she hadn't foreseen. The first sin, stealing money, was a test of her resolve and her desperation. She waited until the village chief and his family were asleep before sneaking into their home. The room was dimly lit, and her heart pounded as she opened the chest where the chief kept his wealth. The coins gleamed in the faint moonlight, and her trembling hand scooped them into a bag. Adanna justified her actions, convincing herself that the money was a means to maintain her newfound beauty and status. But as she fled the house, the guilt of her betrayal lingered like a shadow, whispering that this was just the beginning. The second sin, committing fornication, was a plunge deeper into moral corruption. The man she seduced, a married trader, had always been indifferent to her before her transformation. Now, captivated by her beauty, he fell easily into her trap, Adanna played her role perfectly, feigning love and charm, but beneath her radiant exterior was a storm of doubt. The knowledge that she was breaking a sacred bond between him and his wife gnawed at her. When the wife confronted her, tears in her eyes, Adanna felt a flicker of remorse, but she suppressed it, convincing herself that the blame rested on the man's weakness, not her own. The third sin, kidnapping a child, was darker and far more personal. She chose her neighbor's son, a playful boy who often smiled at her, even in her old life. Under the cover of night, Adanna lured the child away with promises of sweets and stories. The boy followed her, trusting and unaware of her intentions. She hid him in an abandoned hut at the edge of the village, listening as the neighbors frantically searched for him. The sound of the mother's wails pierced Adanna's heart, but she didn't return the child until dawn, claiming she had found him wandering. The villagers praised her for her heroism, but Adanna knew she had exploited their trust, and the boy's frightened eyes haunted her dreams. The fourth sin, breaking apart a happy couple, required cunning and deceit. Adanna targeted the village's most admired couple, Io and Ifeoma, whose love was celebrated by all. She began spreading rumors, whispering lies into the ears of those close to them. She hinted at infidelities, fabricated stories of betrayal, and planted seeds of doubt in their minds. Over time, her lies took root, and the couple began to argue and mistrust each other. Their once unshakable bond unraveled before the entire village. Adanna watched from the sidelines, a twisted sense of satisfaction mixing with an undercurrent of guilt. She had destroyed something pure, and the pain she caused them mirrored her own inner turmoil. The fifth sin, torturing a servant, was a shocking act of cruelty. One evening, a young girl serving at a feast accidentally spilled water on Adanna's elegant gown. The room fell silent as Adanna stood, her face a mask of rage. Dragging the girl outside, she forced her to kneel and lashed her with a stick. The girl's cries filled the night air, but Adanna's anger blinded her to mercy. Even as the villagers turned their eyes away, unsettled by her cruelty, Adanna justified her actions, believing she needed to assert her authority to maintain respect. The sixth sin, burning the face of a pretty woman, was a testament to the jealousy festering within her. One of the village women, Ngozi, began to draw attention for her natural beauty. Though Adanna was still more admired, she felt threatened by Ngozi's rising popularity. In a calculated move, Adanna invited Ngozi to her home under the guise of friendship. As Ngozi sat chatting, Adanna accidentally spilled boiling water on her face, leaving her scarred for life. The screams echoed in Adanna's ears long after Ngozi had left. Though the villagers pitied Ngozi, they dared not confront Adanna, who had grown too powerful. Inside, however, Adanna felt hollow, her actions carving deeper wounds into her soul with each passing day. The final sin was the most terrifying yet, the ultimate test of Adanna's morality. The witch demanded she poison the village by throwing a deadly vial into the communal river, the primary water source for everyone. Standing by the riverbank under the cover of darkness, Adanna gripped the small vial tightly, her hands trembling. The liquid inside glistened under the moonlight, deceptively innocent in appearance, yet capable of wiping out every man, woman, and child who drank from the water. Her mind raced as she replayed the witch's promise of eternal beauty and wealth if she completed this final act. Yet, for the first time, she hesitated. She thought of the innocent children laughing by the river earlier that day, the families gathering around fires, and even the faces of those who once ridiculed her. Could she bear the burden of their deaths for her vanity? Her heart ached as she weighed her desire for acceptance against the irreversible devastation this act would bring. Tears streamed down her face as the faces of her victims flashed in her mind. The tortured servant, the scarred woman, the broken families. The guilt she had suppressed overwhelmed her, a tide far stronger than her fear of losing everything. Adanna knelt by the river, clutching the vial as her sobs echoed in the quiet night. She couldn't do it. With trembling resolve, she hurled the vial far into the woods, shattering it against a rock. Poison seeped harmlessly into the soil, far from the water. Adanna had made her choice. She would not sacrifice the lives of others for her own gain. She knew this act of defiance would strip away everything the witch had given her, but for the first time, she felt a flicker of peace. When the villagers gathered the next morning, Adanna stood before them, no longer the radiant figure they admired, but a trembling woman consumed by guilt. Her beauty had already begun to fade as she confessed her sins, her voice breaking with sorrow. She recounted everything: the witch's deal, the acts she committed to maintain her wealth and beauty, and her refusal to poison the river. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as the weight of her words settled over them. The villagers were horrified by the depths of her betrayal, but saw the torment etched into her face. Adanna wept openly, begging for their forgiveness, even though she doubted she deserved it. For a long moment, silence hung in the air. Then, one by one, the villagers stepped forward. Some hesitated, their pain evident, while others were quicker to forgive. The chief, whose treasury she had stolen from, and the family she had hurt most deeply, spoke last. Though their voices were heavy with emotion, they acknowledged her remorse and offered her their forgiveness. "You saved us when you could have destroyed us," said the chief. "We cannot undo what has been done, but we can choose to forgive." Despite their words, Adanna felt no relief. The scars of her actions remained, etched in the lives of those she had wronged and in her own heart. Though the villagers forgave her, she could not forgive herself. Knowing she could never truly belong again, she decided to leave the village. Before dawn, she packed her few belongings and walked away, not looking back. Her departure left the villagers reflective, her story serving as a somber reminder of how far one could fall and the difficult path to redemption. Adanna's silhouette faded into the horizon as she left the village behind, her bare feet carrying her along an unknown path. The morning sun rose gently, casting a golden light over the fields, but her heart felt heavy with regret. She paused at a hilltop overlooking the village, her eyes lingering on the familiar rooftops and the river she had once been tempted to poison. The laughter of children and the hum of daily life reached her ears, a bittersweet reminder of the lives she had spared. Yet, the weight of her past actions pressed down on her like a stone, each sin a scar on her soul. Though the villagers had forgiven her, Adanna could not forgive herself. She had glimpsed the depths of her own darkness, and the memory of those she had hurt burned in her heart. She vowed to spend her life seeking redemption, though she knew it might never feel complete. Turning away, she disappeared into the wilderness, her figure growing smaller against the vast landscape. The villagers spoke of her for years, her tale a cautionary story of temptation, vanity, and the power of redemption. Adanna's name lived on, a reminder of both human frailty and the courage to choose sacrifice over destruction.